Our next guest has become very familiar with all of us over the last year and a half. With the help of Impact, he won his race, the state treasurer's race, last year and hit the ground running when he took office. As treasurer, he has already made good on his promise to cut the wasteful fees paid in Wall Street from the retirement system, and is well on his way of saving more than $100 million a year. He is also working to shore up to the state health, ensure that the state health plan, stabilizing premiums, reducing waste, and save money. Before running for treasurer, he served as head of the State Division of Employment Security, served for 4 terms in the North Carolina House of Representatives, working his way to Speaker Pro Tem. He is also an avid motorcyclist and continues to race bikes when he isn't wearing a suit and stay as state treasurer. In October 2006, he set a record visiting 48 states and riding more than 32,000 miles in 1 month. Please help me welcome to stage the state treasurer, Dan Folwell.
Good morning. You know why they put me over here today, right? Because last year when I was talking to you, I got my notes confused with his notes. So I didn't know quite what I was going to say, but I'm really jealous I don't have one of those black hats. That really looks great. It's such a pleasure to be with you as the 28th treasurer of North Carolina. It's been an awesome 8 months. I inherited an agency with a lot of great state employees. I think Brenda Williams is in the audience somewhere. There you are. Now, she's probably got your money. She runs the Unclaimed Properties Division, and there's about $600 million worth of money sitting at the Unclaimed Properties Division that belongs to the citizens of North Carolina. So we're gonna make her backlog go up a little bit. So when you go home, not while I'm speaking, you might ought to go to nccash.com and punch in your name and see if you've got any money that Brenda can send you. So this might be a very profitable trip for you, right, Brenda? It's been a great pleasure. I'm going to give you a few remarks, and then I think I'll open it up for questions. I would not be the 28th state treasurer of North Carolina but for BUT-FOR, the support, endorsement, and prayers of SEANC. So my applause goes to you today. I will tell you that in my short time as the treasurer of North Carolina, and as many of you have heard, the treasurer's office is the 26th largest pool of public money in the world. Not only does it represent 2 of the most important things in your life behind your faith and your family and your health, which is the pension and the state health plan. In addition to all of that, it also is the state bank. So in addition to the $105 billion worth of money that we have to manage, there's about $175 billion of money that comes through the treasurer's office as the state bank. So there's a very high chance if you rent a canoe at Lake Gaston or if you pay a tuition to one of our universities, that money eventually comes through the treasurer's office and back out. And we couldn't do our jobs without the hardworking state employees that we have working there. I will tell you that this country is facing some huge challenges over the next few days in natural disasters. I will tell you that at the end of the day, the people who will be closest to the health of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and any other geographic area that hurricane might hit, the people who probably will end up with the responsibility of bringing the state back to its previous existence is state employees, the DOT workers. It's great to declare states of emergency and have contingency plans, but at the end of the day, somebody has to do something. And it's typically folks like you that do that. Let me just go through a little bit of a round robin and tell you what I've done over the last 8 months. As I said to you in this very hall last year, that it's important that people, when they fill out their job application, that they do what they said they were going to do. There's not a person in this room or a person who reports to a person in this room who would be able to keep their job if they put one thing on their job application and then when they get that job, they did something different. So the three things that I put on my job application, number one, regarding your pension plan, is that in the first 100 days, I would figure out where your money was, who's managing it, how good are they, and how much are we paying them. So when I got there, they tried to set up a bunch of meetings with me, and I said, I want 175 meetings on 12-minute intervals. I want to call every single person that's managing your money. Now, the reason that was important to you last year and it's important to you this year is that your leadership has been telling you for months, if not years, that the exorbitant fees that are being paid to Wall Street, this is your money that's being paid to Wall Street, were completely out of line. What your leadership has been telling you over the last few years regarding these Wall Street fees is exactly true. So what we've been doing is we've been calling the money managers and asking them these questions. And one of the first calls that I make, and you can go to Business Week and read about this, one of the biggest money managers in the world, about 8 minutes into my phone call, he said, Ms. Treasurer, I read that you used to be a garbage collector and a motorcycle mechanic and had a blue-collar background. He said, I don't know if I believe all that. Now, this is one of the people who manage your money. And I said, okay. He said, so I'm going to give you a test. I said, that'll be great. He said, where do you put the gasoline in a 51 Cadillac coupe? If you know so much about cars and motorcycles, where do you put the gasoline in a 51 Cadillac coupe? And I said, in the tail light. I said, do I need to waste any more of my time telling you which tail light, or can you figure that part out? I didn't stop there. He said, Ms. Treasurer, he said, you're the first person in the world I've ever asked that question of who knew the correct answer. He said, congratulations, you passed my test. I said, sir, I said, we got 43 seconds left on this phone call, and I know that I might talk with an accent, but I don't think with one. And I want there to be no misunderstanding from this point forward that any time that I have a conversation with you, it's about you passing North Carolina's test, not me passing yours. He sent me an email back a couple of days later and said, touché. My point of saying that is that what I'm finding as the 28th Treasurer of North Carolina is that we've been signing other people's contracts. They haven't been signing ours. And that is not only impacting the pension plan and these exorbitant Wall Street fees that we've been paying, but it's also highly impacting the state health plan, which I know is very dear and important to you and your members. So in the first 100 days, we've cut out about $62 million of fees, Wall Street fees. Now, if numbers make you nauseous, you probably should leave the room right now, so I'm going to give you a few. So when you cut out $62 million in fees in year one, that's not just savings in year one, that's savings in year 2, 3, and 4. So we are on a projection right now over a 4-year period of time to cut out $250 million in fees. The very person that I had that conversation with that I mentioned a while ago sent me an email about 4 weeks ago and said, we've decided to cut your fees on your index funds by 33%, completely unsolicited. My point is that when you set the tone that we're going to be signing our contracts, not other people's, it's funny how people come up to you and offer you concessions that you never even had to ask for. That's where you get the leverage. More importantly that, we're trying to reduce complexity and build value. We're finding some things in the pension plan that it's going to take me 4 years to deal with. you have about $700 million worth of timber, logs, forest. A lot of this timber stretches all the way from Oregon all the way to Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. And the problem with timber is that somebody made this investment because they thought timber was going to be a great investment, but we haven't made any money on it in 11 years. And in most of those years, and I want to say this slowly, the tree is growing slower than the price per board foot's falling. Now, I don't know if you do soybeans or corn or know anything else about agriculture, but you can't have a crop that's growing slower than the price of what that crop is falling. I don't care what business you're in. So we have a lot of investments like that that are now locked up for 10 and 12 years that we're trying to make sure that we realize the value out of. So that's the pension plan. We're very happy that last year when I met with you, we were going to cut $100 million worth of fees over the 4-year period. We're going to blow right through the $100 million in a very major way. Now let's talk about the state health plan. The state health plan is a mess. Now, let me tell you that in one of these conversations with one of these money managers, and I'll try not to show my contempt when I make this remark to you. We were on a conversation about one of these Wall Street fees, and somebody that was sitting around me said, well, it's only $118,000. And I took out my cell phone. I said, we need to call somebody. And he said, well, who are we going to call? I said, let's call a prison guard. Let's call a highway patrolman. Let's call a nurse at UNCG. Let's call somebody who's actually doing the work for the citizens of this state and ask them how they feel about your comment that that's only $118,000. Just very briefly, going back to the pension plan, in the last 30 days, we have paid out $500 million in benefits out of the pension plans of the local government and the state workers. We're paying out $500 million every 30 days out of those plans. We need to make sure that everyone who's getting one of these checks is entitled to one of these checks. And unfortunately, I cannot report to you that that's absolutely true, but we're getting to the bottom of it. We found an entire county commission that's been on the pension plan for 16 years. There's only one elected county official by the statutes, the laws, and the Constitution of North Carolina that are entitled to be on the local government pension plan. That's the high sheriff. County commissioners have never been allowed to be on the pension plan of North Carolina, and this particular county has been on the pension plan for 16 years. We found some pensioners who have been receiving 2 pension checks. I know where some of you were in 1981. You weren't here, but some of us were. Some people who have been receiving 2 pension checks since the early 80s. Now, when you receive 2 pension checks from all the way back to the early 80s, you knew you were doing something wrong. You get 2 deposits for the exact same amount. And when you do that for that period of time, it adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars of overpayments. We're taking every one of those very seriously. These people that you have read about who have committed crimes while in the act of public service, some who are elected, some who are appointed, there's been a law in the books that if you commit a crime while a public servant, that you forfeit your pension. We're enforcing that law. I hope you like that. Let's talk briefly about the state health plan, and let me give you some great news. The state health plan right now is growing at about 4.5% to 5% a year in terms of the amount of money, The prescription drug costs are growing about 7.5% a year, and the medical costs are growing at about 6% a year. And the governor's budget and the legislature's budget only funded the state health plan at 4%. Now, they fully funded the pension plan plus a few extra dollars. But this health plan thing is a very serious issue. When you're the largest purchaser of something in this state and you can't do it better and more efficiently on behalf of members of this plan, something's wrong. Let me read to you, and somebody give me the Carol Burnett when it's time for me to get off, because I want to ask some questions. Let me read to you 3 sentences. The state health plan is at risk for overpaying medical claims because the plan does not follow up on potential overpayments that are identified by the plan's external auditors. The state health plan is at risk for overpaying medical claims because it does not adequately manage its recovery function. The plan is at risk for overpaying medical claims because the plan has not taken action to prevent the coordination of errors. The plan is at risk for overpaying medical claims because the plan's auditors, guess how many auditors worked in the state health plan when I was sworn in January? 0. Guess how many accountants worked in the state health plan when I was sworn in January? 0. Guess how many actuaries who are supposed to be calculating all this stuff worked in the state health plan when I was sworn in January? 0. The plan is at risk for overpaying medical claims because the plan, even though it pays $2 billion a year, the auditors do not have access to the contracts and cannot independently verify that the plan receives the proper contractual discounts from its provider network. This is from 2011. This is from the state auditor of North Carolina. And the baseline to try to figure out what to do about the state health plan is to take these 3 findings and at least try to cure these 3 things. So what we're doing on the state health plan, we're making sure that we're signing our contracts and not theirs. One of the things that I'm most proud of in my first 8 months, and this is directed to the people in this audience who are 65 and above, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. We just renegotiated the Medicare Advantage contract with UnitedHealthcare. I did not know 3 months ago that about 2 things regarding our Medicare Advantage product. I did not realize that the profit sharing that we were supposed to be receiving when the contract was extended about 1.5 years ago, the paragraph that talks about that was not carried over into the new extension. That cost me about $70 million. I also didn't realize that there was something going on in Congress called a health insurance fee that's associated with Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. This fee had been in the freezer. It had been sunset last year so that people like us would not have to pay this tax on these premiums. Just that tax was going to make my Medicare Advantage premiums go up 27% in 2018. We just renegotiated that contract with UnitedHealthcare with a 0 increase in premium. Now, I'm sure UnitedHealthcare is somewhere in the audience, as well as Blue Cross and other providers. Let me tell you that I really want you to help me take a real close look at this UnitedHealthcare Medicare Advantage product. It's only available to 65-year-olds and above. You know, a lot of people weren't believers in that product when it first came on board about 3 years ago, but the people I've talked to tell me it's so simple. You just have one card. You don't have a Social Security card and then a Part D card and then a Blue Cross. You don't have any. You just have one card, and it's all kind of synchronized. Let me tell you, it'll really help me the more people that we get on the Medicare Advantage program, and to let you know that you're not out there by yourself. 76% of all the retirees in North Carolina are already on the UnitedHealthcare Medicare Advantage program. The more people that shift into that product, the more room that I will have to take the savings associated with that and then in 2019 do what I promised you I would do, and that is to start cutting family premiums for North Carolina state employees. That's what's happening with the Medicare Advantage program. That's what's happening with state health plan. Open enrollment. How many of you love doing open enrollment with a state health plan? Raise your hand. Some bright lights in here. Do you see any hands up, sir? Okay. No one that I hired in the state health in the treasurer's office in January was able to successfully enroll in the state health plan without assistance, including me. There's no reason for that. Last year, they tried to make it more simple. Last year, you had to click on something 51 times, right? I need an amen out there. And then you had to make sure that your smoking cessation answer was the same as your active health survey. And then at the end of the day, you probably, and I don't know how to do this, you had to take a screenshot of everything that you did so that if it didn't take into the system, you had some proof that you did all this. Raise your hand if you've heard any of these stories. Next year, we're going to 10 clicks from 51. Actually, it's not next year, it's next month. Okay, it's for next year. And I told them, I said, this is what I want. Do you smoke, yes or no? Do you agree to smoking cessation, yes or no? Which plan do you want, yes or no? And you're done. That's it. Now, you still need to, for your own purposes, have a primary care physician because that ends up hitting you on a benefit, but it's not part of the open enroll process. There were 33 questions on that active health survey, and 9 of the 33 questions, including the first question, how are you feeling today? You could bubble in, I don't know. In 9 of the questions, you just put, I don't know. People were just running through that survey just to get the credit off of their premium so that they could just get done with all this. We've eliminated all that. So I hope you're very happy with what we're doing there. We just got through with enrollment verification. Now, I just told you we had a county commission that was on the pension plan. We have people getting 2 pension checks. We had to do an enrollment verification. I am not going to be the treasurer of North Carolina and come to this meeting every year and look you in the eye and think that there's one person on these plans that are getting money that they don't deserve or getting medical services they don't deserve. The problem of that is simple. The last time they did an enrollment verification audit, I can't find any of the documents that anybody submitted back in 2011 when that audit was done. The audit we just completed, 195,000 dependents were properly verified, certified as being part of the plan. We have a few thousand that are not. We've had a few people write in and say, you got me. I'm not married to this person anymore, and they've been on this plan for years. We've actually had a few people say that. My point of telling you that is that this time, this enrollment audit is a living, breathing document. If you're in this audience right now and you have a 10-year-old child and you have properly verified to us that that is your child, that is now in a digital electronic form so that we never, ever have to ask you about that again. I'll close by telling you that I wear this pin, and this is a pin that belonged to Treasurer Harlan Bowles, and he was the keeper of the public purse, and this is his book. And all that we're trying to do, regardless of how people feel about my bedside manner, is that we're trying to be loyal and exercise a duty of care to the people who have money in these plans. That's all we're going to do. And that's all we're going to do as long as I'm the treasurer of North Carolina. I appreciate your time. I'll be glad to answer a few questions. Thank folks like Brenda, who's one of the 6, 7 members of our leadership team, and others out there who might work for the treasurer's office. I appreciate your prayers and your support over the last year. And I will just say one thing, and your leadership will confirm this. When we were renegotiating this Medicare Advantage program where we were facing a 28% premium increase and we negotiated at a 0 increase, I brought SEANC to the table. It was the alpha and the omega. I brought them in. I said, this is what we're facing. This is where I hope to get. And then I'm going to call you back in when we get to the end and let you know what we've accomplished. So I really appreciate SEANC being at the table on these important issues. My next year is going to be focused on sustainability. How are we going to sustain the state health plan? How are we going to sustain this defined benefit plan? That's where my focus is going to be. Thank you for your time, and God bless you. Be glad to, if you have time.
We'll take a few questions. I will govern that. So please step to the mic and I will recognize you.
Okay.
As we will take 4.
Okay.
Okay, I got it. As we're waiting, I'm going to present him my pen so you can quit wearing the whole pen.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let me say about answering questions. The other thing I promised this group last year is transparency. And every month for 1 hour, any member of the media can call me and ask me any question they want to, because this is the people's money. So I'm not always going to know the answer, but the fact is that when you're the keeper of the public purse, the word public, that's what that means. I will tell you before I take the first question, as I was calling these money managers, we had a couple of firefighters come up, and they just wanted to visit with me. They had driven 2 or 3 hours to visit with me, and they came into the room, and some of the people got nervous because we were calling these investment managers and asking them, who are you, where are you, how good are you, and how much are we paying you? And I said, what are you nervous about? And they said, well, the people that are managing our money doesn't know these people are sitting here. I said, whose money do you think this is? It's their money. They can sit here as long as they want to. So,
Mike 4.
Benny Brigman, retiree council chair. Mr. Folwell, I just would like to let everyone know that you have lived up to your commitment. Mr. Folwell has attended our retiree council meetings, as well as one time he could not make the meeting. He called in and took questions and kept us up to date with what was going on. And to that end, we appreciate what he has done and what he has said. But I do have one question. Where do we stand as far as getting a seat back on the retiree advisory council or board of trustees, as well as the insurance board of trustees?
the question was, in case you didn't hear it, where do we stand to have a SEANC representative? It's one of those things that is in the front of my mind that I haven't gotten to yet. It seems like that I haven't had the opportunity, and I hope Brenda will give me a second on this. I think I'm working more hours as a state treasurer than any state treasurer this century. And it seems like every day a few things are popping up that we did not anticipate. I appreciate the question. I appreciate you reminding me of that, and I hope that Mr. President, Mitch, and Artis, and others will just make an appointment, come over and say, these are the appointment opportunities that you have as the treasurer, and we can go forward and try to get that taken care of before the end of the year. I will tell you that many of these board seats are appointed by the governor. I think I have a great working relationship with Governor Cooper. So even if I don't have the opportunity to appoint someone, I'd sure like to advocate for one of the slots that he might have for him to do the same thing.
Mike 2.
Jim Presley from Cullowhee, District 1. Mr. Treasurer, I want to thank you for all the things you've done for us in our retirement system and our health care plan. But I would like to ask that for the entire group to explain there's a dispute going on between Mission Healthcare Systems and Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and that impacts perhaps tens of thousands of Western North Carolina residents and several thousand state employees who are covered through our state health plan. Could you just explain to us what your office is taking, what position your office is taking, and any efforts you have made to help protect our ability to get health care locally, as opposed to having to drive sometimes hours to receive care in network?
Thank you. The question was, there's a huge contract dispute, and today it's Mission Health. Tomorrow it could be Wake Forest. The next day it could be Novant. We have a serious issue with healthcare providers and the concentration thereof. As we stand here today, don't hold me to this number, I think it's pretty accurate. We have 116 hospitals operating in North Carolina this morning. I think 72 of those are affiliated with 11 of these big networks, like a Mission, Novant, Baptist Hospitals. So the number of hospitals that are now concentrated in the hands of these networks is more hospitals in the hands of bigger networks. And then 5 years from now, I expect we're going to have less than 100 hospitals, and then there's only going to be about 4 or 5 networks, and then those networks are probably going to control 80 of those hospitals that remain. The Mission Health situation is very serious to me. We're going to be doing everything we can. At this point, I've been standing down and letting these people that we have signed contracts with get down to business, bring their toothbrush to these meetings, and take care of this issue so that people like you aren't negatively impacted. Now, obviously, if you look at the calendar, you can see that we are in the short rows of doing something about that. We're having a meeting on this issue next week where we'll be figuring out exactly where they are. I have spoken to the head of Blue Cross. I have spoken to the head of Mission Health. And I've told them both, you got businesses to run, but so do I. And my business is to provide access to health care to the people of Western North Carolina. And I'm sure going to run my business. And so we hope that message will have some impact, but there's so many major things going on. And Mission Health is not unique in these contract issues, but they are unique if you look at the shape of our state and where Mission Health happens to sit in terms of that western part of North Carolina. So we're very serious about it. I'm very serious about the ECU Vidant situation. I'm serious about the announcement last week about UNC hospitals. All of these things have a potential of negatively impacting our members. And I want them to have the access that they deserve as being a member of this plan, and for them not to have to incur additional expenses. And that's my goal for you.
Mike Warren.
Thank you, Mr. President. Secretary Folwell, Mike Gould, I live in Raleigh and the chair of District 41. Sir, I've got maybe 5-6 years left to retirement. And my question, and please forgive me if you've already addressed this, but I would like, and there are many here and many that have already retired, that would like to be able to have the same privilege of the Bailey Amendment that was passed for certain retirees years ago. And we have been fighting for that for quite some time. And I'd like to know if you would work with us, with our leadership, to encourage the General Assembly to move on that over the next couple of years so that all of us moving forward can have the knowledge that we're going to have that benefit.
Sure.
And do you understand the Bailey Amendment?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your question. The question was, would I participate in advocating for the extension of the Bailey Amendment to a class of individuals that's currently not under that amendment? And my understanding is that amendment was afforded to certain people who work for the state as of a certain day. It's not something as a legislator that I ever worked on, even as chair of the Finance Committee. It's not something that I've given any thought to as the treasurer. I will tell you that, and I think your leadership knows that I don't offer things that I don't think I can fulfill, and I don't make promises or overpromise. My number one goal right now, and I hope that you appreciate this answer, is to make sure that we can sustain this health care plan without messing with co-insurance and formularies and co-pays. That's all that's been happening for years. All that's been happening for years is they say one thing and then they go into these formularies and co-pays and co-insurances and they do all this other stuff that you can't really see. I'm sick, I'm tired of that. I'm concerned about the sustainability of the state pension plan. The state pension plan has not earned its assumed rate of return on average this century. You all contribute 6% of your salary to this pension plan. The employer that you work for, whether it's DOT or Cultural Resources or whomever, they contribute this year 10.7% of your salary to this pension plan. The only way this thing works is about over 80% of whatever this pension plan does over your life as a state employee has to come from investment earnings. That's where it comes from. And we have not earned those investment earnings on average for the last 16 years. I'll be glad to look at the advocacy for the Bailey Amendment, but I'll tell you, it's not my top priority. And I'm sorry, that's probably not the answer that you want, but if you knew what I knew about what's really going on with your state health plan and your pension plan, you probably don't want my focus directed from those two things, which I think are important to most members of this state.
Mike 2.
Hi.
I'm Quintaline Bourne from District 68. I, first of all, would like to thank you for all that you're doing, but I also want to see if you could concentrate as well on the pension plan as you do the health care plan as far as employees being overcharged, double billed by hospital for medical care. Because if you could get that in hand, that will help on the medical costs.
Well, thank you. The comment was, she hopes that I am as evangelical about working on the pension plan as I am the health plan as far as cutting these costs. I will tell you that I'm doing everything humanly possible to make sure that what I put on my job application with SEANC that I'm fulfilling. I also tell you that we are, I think, in a very short period of time, have created a culture in the state treasurer's office. Brenda knows who this $600 million belongs to. It belongs to somebody in this state. I know who this $92 billion pension plan belongs to. It belongs to the participants of these plans. So I can tell you that I'm doing everything humanly possible to have loyalty and duty of care to both of these situations. And it doesn't always mean it's going to be good news. It just means that there's no trust between the state employees, maybe the previous treasurer, the state employees, and there's just a whole big level of distrust out there. And I'm going to do my job to make sure that we are the keepers of the public purse on behalf of you and other members. Thank you.
Mike 1.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Stewart from District 42. And on the state health plan, it's come up twice, and I've only been working in the state of North Carolina for 3 years, to allow us to keep our children on the plan, but to take our spouses off. And this is of great concern for those of us like myself. My partner, my husband, is a stay-at-home father full-time. We made that decision because I could get health benefits through my job. Is it still on the table for spouses to be taken off of our health insurance, or is this something that you're working to preserve?
Okay. The thought of not having a spousal option in the state health plan has never crossed my mind or left my lips. Now, there is a trend, which some of you are very aware of, that says that if your spouse is on a health plan of, for example, one of the large banks, and that spouse has eligibility for health care somewhere else. That's not your question, but that's sort of part of this whole issue. All I can tell you is that your state health plan has one of the lowest participations of young, healthy families of any of its plan of its kind in the United States. How can that be? I can tell you how it can be. It's too expensive. It's simple. And I don't know all of you individually, but I would bet lunch today that for the most part, you can tell me what it cost for what you're wearing, the car that you drove in here today, what it cost, and what you paid for the last tank of fuel. But even after you consume health care in this state, you still can't tell me what you got and what you paid for it, can you? I'm going to be a part of changing that. And I think as we start to change that, then we have these explanation of benefit statements that come out. I saw one the other day, had 16. I'm not a doctor. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. I'm going to count it. But there were 16 entries on this explanation of benefit, and I couldn't tell you if it was for a diaper, a Q-tip, a Tylenol, or a gallbladder removal. Every single one of those entries was a facility charge. Every single one of them. So I know I've digressed from your question, which I have a reputation of doing, but listen, let me tell you that I think that the largest purchaser of health care in North Carolina can offer a product for spouses and families that is cheaper than anyone else in the state can, because we're the largest purchaser of that. I will tell you, which I failed to, and I'm glad you stood up to ask your question, we have froze family premiums for next year. And we have frozen employee dependent premiums for next year. There's lots of different little categories in that. I'm not going to be satisfied with freezing these premiums. I want to lower these premiums. I want to get young, healthy people back on the state health plan to balance out people my age.
We'll take one more. Mike 2.
Thank you for taking part of your time off your full plate to come see us. I spoke with one of your staff, and I sincerely apologize that I cannot remember her name. But kind of going back to where we used to have, you could submit a saving money from the state, and you could get a reward. But I think that needs to be seriously looked at. I worked over 30 years in the medical field, and I took my own time as a retiree submitting a very good idea, if I say so myself, about how one number in a code can change your bill $5,000, and took the time to do a lot of research to get an answer, not from your team, but your retiree. We can't look at it. I think there are a lot of state employees that are retired that have a lot of on-the-job education that could save the state a lot of money. And a lot of us would just be proud to say it was our idea, whether you paid me or not. I think you could probably solicit a lot of committees that would really not cost you anything to give you a lot of ideas. And I myself, as today, would volunteer to help you any way I can for my family's state employees.
Thank you. Make sure that you see me before you leave. Okay. Brenda, don't let me forget that idea. thank you for your comments. Let me just, this is how I feel about you. You're customers of mine. I'm going to try to turn you into fans. And the only way I can do that is by listening to suggestions like this. And you know, last year I brought a bowling pin. I still have the bowling pin. Sometimes people hear me speak, they think I'm going to use it on somebody, but the bowling pin represents the fact that there is an idea in someone's head, maybe several people in this room, that seems so tiny that can lead to 50, 60, 70 million dollars worth of savings. You know, to freeze family premiums this year, it only cost me $8 million. To reduce family premiums by $100 a month, I know exactly what that costs. So anytime just because we're managing $100, $250 billion, don't ever underestimate what we can do with extra money in order to lower family premiums. So let me respond to your comment. We're going to get that set up so that we push the power back to you. I had a person call me the other day and announce that they had just had a child, and I said, because I'm an inquisitive person, I said, where did you have it? And they said, at so-and-so hospital. And I said, why did you have it there? And they said, it was $7,000 cheaper. I said, how did you figure that out? Because I tried to get an x-ray of my knee done earlier this year, or a couple years ago when I had my gallbladder removed, and I really tried to figure out who does it the best and the cheapest, and I was very unsuccessful. But this young lady who just had a child had figured it out, how to save this money. So I appreciate the offer of the institutional knowledge of people like you, and we will take advantage of that. I will tell you that you can be the watchdogs, because there's a lot more of you than there are any of us, and it's very important. I will tell you, as far as customer service is concerned, I don't know the exact number, Brenda, but I think the speed at which we processed retirement papers in June of this year was 4 to 5 times faster than had ever been done in the history of the agency. I was told when I got sworn in that it was taking some people 17 weeks to get an appointment to process their retirement papers, and I think Steve Toole just reported the month of June, we did it in less than 8 days. The final 2 things I'll say to your question is that we're trying to be more customer friendly, and we're trying to turn you into fans. We had this whole survey at the end of our call center calls where we were asking you all these questions. Some of you may have gone through this. We've eliminated all the questions but one. Are you ready? Would you hire the person that just tried to help you? Is there any other question that matters in customer service? Would you hire the person who just tried to assist you? We got about a 92% approval of that right now. Flynn, I don't think there's any other question that really matters, because these people who work in our call center, whether it's in the state health plan or where they're contracted out, they work for you. So we're very serious about that. The last thing I'll say is I need your help on something next year. I'm not going to talk about opioids. I'm going to talk about prescription drugs. I'm going to spend $1 billion next year on prescription drugs. $1 billion. And you all have your own stories about how drug costs have gone up on something that you've been taking for 5 and 10 years. You all have stories about people who are paying $100 for an EpiPen and now it's $300. This is the first thing that I need you to do, and it goes back to the lady's question. The first thing I need you to do is, if a doctor writes you a prescription that you are not going to take properly, don't take it. Don't get it filled. I think that I'm spending at least $150 million a year on prescriptions that are not properly taken. If you're not going to, I had a root canal done a few weeks ago. I know I'm violating all my HIPAA stuff today, and the person was going to, prescribe an antibiotic. And I said, I've never had to take anything like that for this. I think I'm going to be okay. Just don't take these prescriptions and get these prescriptions filled if you don't think that you're going to consume them exactly as the pharmacist and the doctor says. My final thought on that is this. I had a lady, and I've violated this rule twice. There should be no man that ever talks about women having children, ever, on any conversation. Right? So I had somebody call me a few weeks ago who just had twins. And she was very serious about feeding her child naturally. And they pushed opioids on her for 5 days. I can't imagine what it's like to have twins, or even one. But they pushed opioids on this lady for 5 days. And she said, I don't want them. I don't want it in my system. Just give me 300 or 400 milligrams of ibuprofen, and I think I can get through this. And then when she went to be discharged from the hospital, they tried to give her a prescription for opioids. She said she didn't want it. And then when they got home, there was a voicemail that says, your opioid prescription is ready to be picked up at the drugstore. All this stuff starts in a really small way. So having folks like you intellectually and physically as the watchdog is very helpful. I think I'm getting to Carol Burnett. My time's up, and I thank you for yours. God bless you.